come on. You know that he's not done with Formula One yet. Surely Christian Horner wants to give it another go. And the team that he might actually partner up with is not one I expected, based on this rumour. Now, let me preface this by stating this source is from the Daily Mail. And I got me plenty of this, just so you know. So, just doing this, I do this for you, That a possible destination for Christian Horner after his formal departure from Red Bull Racing in the last few days was processed could be, according to decent sources, Haas. Wait, Law, you're kidding. Haas? The team that is famous for having a team owner who has said time and time again he would never sell his team or work alongside anyone else? Yeah, okay, I can understand why you might be getting your own personal spanner of speculation out for this one, because he has gone out to say that he would never take any outside investment. He wants to own, lock, stock and barrel, the Haas Formula One team that bears his name. I remember all of the stuff we found out about Maximum Effort and Ryan Reynolds, the consortium that went in with Alpine and gave them hundreds of millions of dollars. They supposedly went to Haas first, and Gene told them where to stick it. And then all of the stuff from Michael Andretti, him regularly calling up Haas in the 2020 period, during the time when Haas nearly went bankrupt, about whether or not they would actually sell up the team. Gene getting really annoyed at Michael Andretti for that one. And it's my own personal belief that all of those celebrities at Alpine, they treat that investment with Alpine as if it were just another dinner room topic. So yeah, you are perfectly valid in thinking that this is a rumour, and Daily Mail, really? I get that. I just thought I would share it with you because it was something that really made me raise my eyebrows. It may never come to pass because it might just be this, a rumour, but honestly, it's something I really wanted to just discuss in the confines of the loft and on the ladder, so get yourself strapped in for some maximum yap. So yeah, just to make sure that you get yourself comfortable, okay? So, okay, there you go. You got yourself a pillow there, lovely. Oh, you might want a snack for this one. Party rings for you. Oh, that's nice. Yeah, my daughter loves those. So, Christian Horner has now officially left the Milton Keynes-based building. And hopefully he didn't get lost amidst all of the copious roundabouts around Milton Keynes, am I right? Seriously, I commuted there for a while. I know exactly how frustrating they can actually be. With the settlement reportedly in the region of around $100 million between himself, his star-studded lawyers, and Red Bull Racing. Which, by the way, according to the likes of Reuters, would be, in theory, less than he would have earned had his contract ran through 2030, which did suggest to me that he was preparing himself to remain in Formula One for at least the next 5 years, and crucially, it also came with a reduced gardening leave period, similar to what Adrian Newey was afforded, which in theory could mean that Horner will become available to become whatever he wants to be in Formula One come the middle of next season. Any team that might be struggling with the brand new regulations, they might be able to look for a brand new guiding light. Now, of course, it became quite evident that the way Horner operated Red Bull after the allegations against him and going into the moment when convergence was a thing last year, it took a notable nosedive, his form. But the achievements that preceded him, they're not things you can just sweep under the rug and ignore. Now, I won't bore you with the list. You already know what Christian Horner has accomplished, him being the team principal of Red Bull Racing for 20 years. Nevertheless, he did suffer a horrifically, awfully shaky period with the RB20, the monster, as Max Verstappen described it, and he simply could not get his mojo back. And also the damage to the team's reputation that actually was manifested underneath Horner, it just became too much to bear for Salzburg and Thailand. He basically lost the room. And also, most importantly, Red Bull would never afford him any financial skin in the game. No stake within Red Bull Racing that might have offered him a little bit more breathing space or downright protection, which is what Toto Wolff has afforded, I think, at Mercedes. So if he were to come back into Formula One, that would be a major condition, a deal breaker even, with any Formula One team. He'd have to have a controlling stake in the team to offer the same protection that his main nemesis Wolff had. And I think it's also the same thing that Papa Stroll has with his U-Tree consortium, the team that basically has the financial purse strings of Aston Martin. And whilst there have been headlines saying that Aston Martin technically doesn't own the team that bears its name, it's basically just become a naming rights sort of thing, that doesn't necessarily mean the Strolls are prepared to sell. Heck, Papa Stroll's stake in the team has actually increased after Aston Martin gave up its stake. Lagonda, not the Formula One team. And seriously, Toto owning a third of the team, I think it's been a real saviour for him. And Horner wants that protection. And let's be honest, the last few years in terms of team principal replacements, it's been absolutely brutal. Stability is rare, so a big name like Horner hitting the market mid-cycle, That could be the kind of story that could tempt boards no matter the baggage that comes with him. So why not take some of his newfound cash and park it with other ventures and over at Haas of all people? It having just crossed $1 billion worth of value last year, according to Sports Pro. Seriously, the increase in values of Formula One team is absolutely crazy. I think when Haas first came around in Formula One in 2016, they were worth a tenth of that. And also, having this kind of investment, it does provide some external financial security, because you've got to really understand that over the years, Haas's financial security has been nothing short of shaky. It's only been thanks to MoneyGram the last couple of years that they've actually managed to have a really credible and stable, drama-free sponsor. That being said, a Horner-backed consortium could provide even more security than MoneyGram can. They've done a really good job, but they only provide $20 million a year. Horner's chops in securing the Oracle deal for Red Bull, that could provide even more backing and even more labels on that wagon of Hatters. A level of credibility that previous backers of Haas may never have been able to manage. And also, at the moment, honestly, I don't think he has anywhere else to go. With Renault committing itself to F1 for the foreseeable future, and its own saviour Briatore signalling that his friend Christian isn't on their radar right now, and then Cadillac overtly rejecting the idea of Horner joining them, since they've already got a team principal, the ex-Manor boss Graham Loudon, the options for a return are looking very thin, or maybe a little pricey if he wishes to buy a minority stake in a team. So why not do it with Haas? If that were to happen, there would have to be three things that would have gone down first and foremost before any dotted lines could be signed. The big one, obviously, Gene Haas actually signalling to the world and to investors that for the first time in forever, he is actually showing some interest in divesting some stake of his own team. There would also have to be credible reporting that Christian Horner has even set up some kind of venture capital firm or consortium to be able to work alongside him, because I don't think he's going to be stumping up all of the cash. He's going to be wanting other investors to get into bed with him. And then, of course, the UK government Companies House website. The moment that Christian Horner's name is added to the roster of directors or is some kind of presence there, then you know something has gone down, but they've chosen not to announce anything. But they obviously have to declare it to the government. So it's too early to say that anything is about to go down, because may I remind you, he is technically on gardening leave at the moment. He cannot pursue anything until the middle of next year. He's only just got this deal across the line, so I'm pretty sure he's going to be just going back to his Oxfordshire manor and just having a little bit of a break. Although based on the fact he still made a departure statement at Red Bull and he regularly texts the likes of Martin Brundle, he's not done with Formula One. It's not a Ron Dennis situation where after he was ousted from McLaren, he wanted nothing to do with the sport and it's only now he's actually showing some interest in the sport again. No, Horner is still very much wanting to be involved. And yeah, that first one, the Gene Chestnut, that is going to be a very tough nut to crack, but I don't think it'll be impossible. But before we touch upon that regular chestnut, excuse me a second, there's also the matter of the allegations that are going to be heard in an employment tribunal in January. If Christian doesn't come out of that in one piece, that will be the end of the matter. No Formula One team or venture capital firm would wish to associate themselves with Horner, no matter how successful his past has been, or how much cash he comes with. He would just simply have to take his payoff from Red Bull and go home. But until then, there are still plenty of valid reasons to suggest that a move to Haas in some shape or form could be a fairly logical one and could be the ticket in propelling Haas up from the plucky underdog team after having survived financial turmoil, with Gunther Steiner trying to find every single sponsor that would actually hear him out, into maybe something that's credible with blue chip firms. And also, there is the matter of a succession plan over at Haas, because even though Gene Haas is more motivated with Formula One than ever, he's never been this keen to celebrate his own team, even though they're only ninth in the constructors. He is still in his early 70s. He's no spring chicken anymore. So not saying there's going to be some sort of fire sale or him eschewing himself of the team entirely, but surely this is a topic within the Haas boardroom that has surely been broached at least a couple of times and might be in the back of Gene's mind. He's going to be wanting to find a worthy successor to ensure that Haas remains a stable force. Because otherwise it could cascade into a power vacuum, like we saw with the departure of Red Bull's own Dietrich Mateschitz. There has to be a game plan that is written down in stone. Also, in modern F1, long-term competitiveness usually relies on stable capital, not just a quick car. Just look at Williams and the steady progression under Doralton Capital's watch. In 5 years, they've gone from scoring no points to their best season in a decade with over 100 of said points. And may I remind you, 2026 hasn't happened yet. That's when James Fowles says they will be cooking with gas. So one way for Gene Haas to maybe preserve the long-term future of Haas is to maybe find some kind of minority supporter or investor to be able to take away some of the load, and he can remain as the head honcho of Haas. Whatever happens, it will have to become clear to anyone who will be partnering with Haas that he remains in absolute control. He has the majority say. But surely it would be the right time to make the most of Formula One's epic value right now, because we might be in a situation where the value of the sport has peaked and it might start to go downward. So maybe Gene might want to recoup some of the investment that he's been pouring into this team. Heck, even if he just sells a small part of that team, he could make back the initial cost of, say, $115 million. That'll be worth it. And let's not forget, Liberty Media will take any opportunity for its influence within America to increase and be seen as compelling. Yeah, Haas for the longest time has prided itself in being the only American Formula One team. But that accolade is not going to be theirs for much longer, because Cadillac are joining the fray. Haas will want to have some kind of response and a little bit more backing and credibility with a man who has plenty of experience with major American corporations for some financial backing and clout. So linking Horner with Haas as some kind of partner could be spun by some way of Liberty Media into a really neat little storyline. Because let's be real, Christian Horner's name within America is very synonymous with Formula One, whether you like it or not. But if he does come a-knocking, he better be ready for a showdown. Since Ayao Komatsu, Haas's current team principal, has arrived, he's made it very clear that his boss is more passionate about F1 than he's ever been, stating that several entities have knocked on Gene's door in the last 18 months especially, and he sent each of them back out of it. And this was all representative of Gene Haas driving one of his own Formula One cars at the Goodwood Festival of Speed. That, in my honest opinion, was an overt display of love and affection for the project that, for the longest time, he was lambasting and lamenting for being so gosh darn expensive. And also it helps that he has a little bit more time to dedicate to Formula One since he sold some of his NASCAR charters. But surely there must be an idea in the back of Gene's mind that if he can remain in charge, then maybe selling off a very small minority stake of the team might be a compelling decision to make, because it will be really establishing the long-term future of his own team. They've survived a decade, which is absolutely fantastic for Formula One over a 75-year period. What I'm trying to say here is that potentially a not-for-sale stance could also coexist with a minority investment from an outside source, so long as Gene remains in charge and there are no bones about it. And if Horner can accept that, then I think Gene will listen. And also, Haas Automation, the company that bears the team's name, has faced trade-related headwinds. The team says the racing program's insulator from all of that turmoil, potentially, but any volatility in the core business, surely that'd be a nudge toward bringing in outside capital for some extra resilience and assurance. Because that's exactly what Aston Martin is going through right now. Like I mentioned earlier, Aston Martin Lagonda, that's the car company, is having to suffer a huge amount of debt right now, and Papa Stroll knows it, him being the owner of the car company as well as the Formula One team. Some way to generate some extra capital and, maybe pay off some of that debt. So, use some of that extra cash to maybe prop up the car company. It's happened, so Haas doing this wouldn't be a major surprise. Also, it wouldn't surprise me that Christian spins this into some way that Gene Haas thinks he's making the biggest and best deal of his own life. And also, Haas's affiliation with Toyota adds a little bit more intrigue into all of this too, because, Christian has worked with Honda for many years, he's sampled success with Honda for many years, and Toyota, they might be interested to learn what that experience was like, because those two companies, they are long-standing rivals. Because their tie-up with Haas, many see it as Toyota maybe dipping a toe back into F1 without full commitment. In the midst of this, Haas gains facilities, expertise, and the Fuji Speedway for testing has essentially become their own private test track. If they wanted to de-risk further, Horner's experience inside Honda's recent winning cycle might be an attractive proposition. Seriously, that institutional memory, it's absolutely valuable. Toyota will very much want to know. So, okay, Law, if this were to happen and Christian Horner did partner up with Haas, what would his role be? You seriously think he would replace Ayao Komatsu as team principal? Are you crazy? After what Ayo's been able to do in making Haas, likable for once? After Steiner basically pummeled their reputation into the dust? Yeah, I do absolutely hear you, and I certainly do not think that Christian Horner will be coming back in as the TP of Haas and the CEO. Komatsu is too valuable for the project, be it his relationship with Gene himself and the ties he has with Toyota Gazoo Racing being incredibly strong. In my mind, there are two potential avenues for Christian within this team. First, there's the simple CEO role, with Komatsu indeed remaining team principal. Think what Zach Brown is to Andrea Stella over at McLaren. Or maybe Sauber, with Mattia Binotto as CEO of the Audi project and Jonathan Wheatley being the team principal of the actual Formula One squad. And it's not like Christian doesn't have experience in being the chief executive officer of a Formula One team, because he was that with Red Bull Racing, as well as the team principal. So if he chooses to not be the team principal of Haas and instead keep that job with Komatsu, an engineering-based bod who knows how to run the team, he's established his own regime, then it might mean that Horner will be delegated to other things that revolve around Formula One. You know, partnerships with sponsors, navigating the political tides of the sport, giving Haas a little bit more heft in that regard, as well as long-term planning, which may mean that Komatsu can simply just keep all of the efforts on the car itself, the factory, and how the team operates on a weekend. It just means that Ayao doesn't have to worry about the political drama of Formula One. He can leave that to Christian to bear, because he does have plenty of experience and he isn't afraid to be the villain, as he has said time and time again. I think if he did come back, Toto would be jumping for joy, saying, yes, excellent, I get to have my old sparring partner again, it's going to be great. Because you got to admit, Toto has been acting a little bit like a lost sheep with Christian gone. The question is, though, is whether or not Komatsu and Horner can actually mesh together. You know, whether or not their personalities are just too different to actually synergize. If that's the case, it could end up being quite combustible. And with Horner having some skin in the game and Komatsu not, Ayao could be sent packing if things got fraught. The other option could be as maybe a managing partner with a simple minority stake, like what Toto Wolff had, his evolution at Mercedes, that being the closest example. And within all of that, it would just be providing simple financial capital and him being just a partner within the background, not having much say in the way the team is operated, except giving them a little bit more, money to play around with, some extra security in that regard. Because you got to see this as happening with Doralton Capital. Even though they own the entire Williams team, they pretty much leave James Vowell and company free to their own devices, maintaining the legacy of the brand, them being fully aware of the value of it, and them reaping the rewards of it with their first green flag podium in 8 years. So maybe Horner might just be that. He might just be a silent partner of the team, allowing Gene to have overall control of it, and Komatsu continues to run the team. Christian would just be a benefactor in the background. So yeah, I don't really see Horner, wherever he lands up, doing the exact same thing he was doing at Red Bull Racing. It's going to be a different role. The question is, what is it going to be? I can also imagine that Christian would have taken all of the lessons that he's learned in the past 18 months and really show Haas what he has actually been able to understand in that time, the scar tissue proving immensely valuable for any team that would take him. He's learned a lot, seriously, through many, many hard knocks. Because he's seen the team that was once fantastic and dominant in 2023 completely fall apart thanks to technical maladies, political turmoil, as well as simply not keeping their eye on the long-term ball, which is something I think Christian will not be making the same mistake again, as well as his public sentiment reaching an all-time low thanks to the needling of Zach Brown and Toto Wolff. However, I would like to think that if Christian Horner came back to Formula One, he would be a changed man in the way he goes racing. So, for starters, maybe showing some goddamn humility when it comes to technical limitations. If your drivers say there's something wrong with the car, listen to the driver. Don't just think, well, things are okay right now, what's your problem? Actually, listen to it. Again, had they just listened to Checo around the Circuit de Catalunya, they would still be winning. There'd be no issues right now. Horner would still have a job. And if you do end up in a situation where there are teams around you which are better than you, don't make some kind of reactive plan where you're just hurling upgrades left, right, and centre because upgrades equals good 100% of the time. They don't work 100% of the time. That's what we've been seeing from Red Bull the last couple of months. More targeted upgrades, steadier upgrades, things that are there to steadily improve the car. And now, supposedly, the RB21 has unlocked massive amounts of potential. And in some circles, there are actually some mini allegations cropping up about maybe some certain shenanigans. So we are back to the old Red Bull, where they are being accused of cheating. Like how McLaren were accused of cheating last year with a mini DRS chestnut. That's when you know that Red Bull could actually be a force for some competitive action. when there are cheating allegations being hurled at them. And then I also think there needs to be, with Haas, a more structured succession plan, because with Adrian Newey and Jonathan Wheatley and Rob Marshall, to name but three senior members, the senior ones that were really there from the beginning of Red Bull Racing departing, it looked like there was really no structure as to who would actually take over their job. So maybe there needs to be some kind of good succession plan in case Haas do lose personnel, either through retirement or maybe opportunities at a front-running team. Better yet, why not try and make Haas one of those front-running teams? You know, try and get them their first podium, perhaps? And most of all, keep your head down and do your job. I know that might contradict what I was saying earlier in Horner reveling in being the pantomime villain. There is still some room for that because F1 is all about theatrics and entertainment, but just pick your battles, Christian. Don't just hurl protests at the FIA and think every single one of them will stick, because that kind of etiquette got the FIA to change the rules after the Canada protest that failed again. Because you got to admit, the public scrutiny toward Horner became a management tax, which ultimately was his undoing at Red Bull Racing. It just made things so untenable there. Seriously, you should not underestimate the optics. It will take a very long time for some fans to forget what happened last year. Could Haas be bothered with that, you might be thinking? Haas has recently solidified goodwill within the F1 world, finally, being seen as a credible team. So, bringing in Christian fresh from scandal, that could alienate some fans and get rid of that underdog fan base entirely, even if it does strengthen the team financially. So in conclusion, I must remind you that this source came from the Daily Mail and that again, you need to take plenty of salt with this. But it does have a certain logic to it. Haas could always do with more capital as well as more political muscle amongst the midfield, and surely Gene Haas has to be thinking about his successor, and Horner offers a lot. Deal-making heft as well as scar tissue from Red Bull that could be valuable for another team. The cleanest fit in my mind, the one that would be the least complicated and least awkward, would be for Horner to come in as the CEO of the Haas Formula One team. Gene Haas is still the owner and chairman, the grand poobah of it all, and Komatsu keeps his job as team principal, and he still has authority over the Formula One team on a race weekend, as well as the car, as well as how the factory is run. If that structure can be maintained and he still has authority, then I think it would be gravy. But there are plenty of roadblocks to traverse for Christian if this is to go ahead. First of all, you got to get Gene Haas to actually be convinced by all of this and not just send Christian Horner packing like he's done with many other suitors. Toyota also has to give its blessing, whether it would want to be associated with Horner. But then again, the Honda Insight, that might be quite tempting. And then, of course, there is the employment tribunal. That has to go through, and Christian Horner has to be declared innocent. Only if these three hurdles are traversed will this rumour become an actual plan. Until then, it's just interesting noise I wanted to share with you, which I thought had a credible spine to it. And something else that I think you'll find interesting is this video right here. I've just got to go and change my clothes. I'll be right back, but, just go over there. I'll meet you there.